right, good evening. John Wirtz, Montgomery County Tea Party. It is November the 10th, and with me is Michael, or with us is Michael Gutzman. Um, Welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
With us also is Larry Rogers, Bob Bagley, Luis Pedraza, and Lana Hort. So, as we discussed a little bit earlier, uh, feel free to take up to 5 minutes in your opening. Tell us a little bit about yourself, why you're running for this office, and then we'll commence with the Q&A, and I will be your timer here. 5 minutes for the opening, 2 minutes for the responses on the Q&A.
Awesome. Well, number one, thank you guys for having me. I know we were just chatting, but some folks were outside the room. I appreciate you guys for taking the time. It's 8 p.m. I know you could have things that you're doing with your family and friends and all that, and you have a lot of these interviews to do. I appreciate the time. I am Michael Gutzman. Currently, I am the Major Crimes Chief at the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office. I am board certified in criminal law. I would like to be your next judge for the 359th District Court. Public service for me is a noble calling, and it started for me back in my formal education. I played baseball at San Jacinto College. I am a graduate of Texas A&M University. It was so nice. I graduated twice, a bachelor's in economics. I have a master's in public service and administration. Then I worked for a year. I went to law school after that at the University of Houston. I graduated early, and I can tell you from the start of my time in law school, I knew that I wanted to be in law enforcement. I actually applied for a job with the DEA. And at that time, I was interning at the Harris County District Attorney's Office. And, like I said, I was planning to graduate early. I did graduate early. But probably about 3 years to the day in May of 2012, I graduated in December. The DEA came back to me and said, hey, it's time to go to Quantico. But I was already working in Harris County at the DA's office. And I felt the calling at that point to be a prosecutor, and I knew that's where I was supposed to be in law enforcement. So I started my career in Harris County after I passed the bar. May of 2016, as a prosecutor, I was hired by Republican Devin Anderson in Harris County. And, one of the things that I want to make sure that you take away from this interview is that I had a formational experience at the DA's office in Harris County, many good things at that time. But one awful thing is that I was there when Kim Ogg took over. I saw the deterioration of the criminal justice system firsthand and the downfall of the once great Harris County District Attorney's Office. Because at that time, I can assure you, and this is taking nothing away from my fantastic former boss, Brett Ligon, but when you graduated law school, still at my time, there were two big offices that you wanted to work for, and that was Dallas and Houston. I've always been a Houston guy. And so I went to work at the Harris County DA's office, and I was a pre-commit intern there, which is kind of a feather in your cap. And I can tell you, when Kim Ogg took over and the Democrat defense attorney judges came in, that was it. The soft on crime approach came in full force, and the criminal justice system collapsed. And then Hurricane Harvey happened right after that. And so I read the tea leaves. I actually went to Montgomery High School, and I knew it was time to come back home. So I saw a job opening at the Montgomery County DA's office. I came up here in November of 2017. I worked through the ranks. It was at that time that I achieved board certification in criminal law. And there's only, 700 or so criminal lawyers, or lawyers actually total in the state of Texas, that have that designation. And I achieved it, according to Brett. I was the fastest one to achieve that in his office, the only felony 2 prosecutor at that time to ever be board certified. And I worked for Brett. I've done a variety of different jobs at the DA's office, everything from responding to fatality crash scenes on the vehicular crimes team. I've prosecuted vehicular crimes, intox manslaughters, failures to stop and render aid. I've worked internet crimes against children. I have tried every manner of violent crime, organized crime, forgery. I mean, I hesitate, for you guys to look and compare, even with people that might have a few more trials than me, the variety of the trial experience that I have. There aren't many prosecutors that have prosecuted a forgery or organized crime up here in Montgomery County, and a few others. But certainly sexual abuse cases involving children. I was fortunate enough to work through the felony ranks on 2 separate occasions. I tried the most felony trials in a year, and I came out into Montgomery County on fire, ready to try cases and ready to do justice for the men and women in this community. I can tell you that at this point in my career, being the chief of the major crime section, Brett, before he left, made this position specifically for me. I handle all the non-domestic violence homicides. I handle the confidential source coordination for the office, proactive narcotics, and I do organized crime and also gangs and special projects as designated by the district attorney. One more thing that I want you to take away. I'm the only candidate in this race that has been, am, and that will be 100% committed to criminal justice. I have never run for a civil bench. I have never practiced civil law. I am 100% committed to doing criminal justice, and that's what I'd like to continue to do as your next judge of the 359th District Court.
All right, thank you very much. Can you tell us a little bit about the court that you're running for and what is the jurisdiction
Of course, yep.
and how your background applies to that?
So there are 4 district courts. They are courts of general jurisdiction, which means they could technically handle felonies, they could handle civil cases, and they could handle family cases. By agreement in the local rules, the judges have designated the 9th District Court, the 221st, the 359th, and the 435th to be courts that hear exclusively felonies. I'm a criminal justice practitioner. I do 100% criminal justice. That's what I intend to do in the 359th. As you all know, probably the legislature has given us now a new district court, the 523rd, that will come online September 2026, I believe. But that's forthcoming. That's not a court that we have now. I have served in the 359th District Court, and it was an honor to work in there. Judge Hamilton is a fantastic judge. She is an outstanding judge to try a case in front of. But the 359th has a problem. They have anywhere from about 1,000 to 1,100 pending cases right now. As you may have read in my responses, 700, touching up to 800 sometimes on average in the other courts. We need a judge that will be 100% committed to going there and clearing the backlog. And I don't want you to look for somebody that says they can do it. I want you to look to somebody, myself, that has done it before. When I served in that court, we caught Judge Lisa Mychalk. And Judge Mychalk doesn't like to be caught. She likes to have the lowest case total there is. And she doesn't always have it. There is some fluctuation based on weeks and cases that come in and all that. Some things in the criminal justice system aren't predictable. But here's what is. I have a plan for it. There will be no more 90-day resets. There will be a standby docket of sorts that I'd like to implement for non-victim cases that are lower level felonies, 3rd degree, and state jail felony drug cases. So we can continue those every 2 weeks to move the docket. And I know how to work in conjunction with the district attorney's office and the defense bar to make sure that those cases move. So we owe an obligation to the sheriff and members of the community to make sure if somebody needs to be locked up, then they need to be locked up. If they need to go to prison, they need to go to prison. If they need to be released or put on probation, then that's what needs to happen. But we owe an obligation to make that decision, make it quickly when we can.
If this thing goes off and you're in the middle of a thought, go ahead and finish it out. So,
Thank you.
Lon?
You had mentioned in your experience, you mentioned getting the Trial Dog Award. Talk a little bit about that, what that means, and how that demonstrates your commitment to work as hard as you need to work to get it done.
I appreciate the question. I can tell you there are a lot of sleepless nights that come with that award. And that's, we have the Trial Puppy Award. That's when you try the most misdemeanors, Larry. That's not the award I got. I got the Trial Dog. I'm not going to bark because I know it's recorded in here, but they give you a trophy and all that, and that's great. But practically speaking, though, what it looks like, Lana, is when you try the most cases in the office. And I did. I got a chance to work, for a fantastic felony chief up there, kind of right out of the gate. And I mean, they were throwing me everything I could handle. It was a tremendous honor. But that means that every single prosecutor in the appellate section, sometimes they're handling all of your appeals, including more than one at a time. And so you're keeping those folks working. In the 359th District Court, you have to have a judge that is prepared to hear trial cases and that wants to go to trial. Knowing the law is one thing. Having the effort and the enthusiasm to hear trials again and again and again, and to have members of the public come forward in a 90-person panel sometime, you have to respect their time. They're not chomping at the bit to come down to the courthouse. So you have to make sure that not only you set the trials that need to be set in the order that they need to be set, but that you respect those jurors' time, potential jurors' time, for the time and commitment they take to come down and serve as jurors at the courthouse.
What were those courts again? The 9th, 359th?
The 9th, the 221st, the 359th, which is the bench that I'm running for, and the 435th.
430.
And then the 523rd asterisk, soon, forthcoming.
Coming, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I believe that's the number. I'm pretty sure it is. At some point, we'll have the 1,000th district court. The legislature keeps rolling.
So, and you mentioned this, how to clear the docket. specifically, I know, and you said you gave some general points. Specifically, you have a plan, and you do have a plan, but elaborate more on that because I think that is an important piece of it. But I'm not sure that us non-legal people understand that. How would you do that specifically?
Yeah, well, number one, I'm going to state the obvious. You have to be in court to do it. And I
Okay.
think you guys have seen the legislature, right, come back on judges this session to say, hey, look, you need to be in court and preside over your dockets.
Yeah.
That legislation, I can assure you, seems to be directed at other jurisdictions, but you have to be present. The other thing that you have to do is you have to make sure that you are putting feet to the fire. And by that, I mean setting cases for trial that need to be set. This is not a criticism of any of our district court judges. I cannot be more clear than that. But there is nuance that is missed when you have not been in the district attorney's office in the last decade. And that is the same for the judges that are on the bench and my opponent. Digital discovery has revolutionized how criminal justice is done. I know which cases we're getting discovery on and how quickly we're getting them. It is incumbent upon the defense bar and the state of Texas to make sure that they're reviewing their case files and that they're ready for trial. So to answer your question directly with a more concrete example, having a drug case where I know we're getting the discovery in pretty much, with some limited exceptions because there's additional things that are required, but on a drug case within 30 or so days, I know how long it should take the defense bar and the prosecutors to review that case. But is it a case that involves a confidential informant? Is it a traffic stop case, right? Those are differences, right, in terms of how complex litigation might be that might require other hearings, right, and discovery related matters that a seasoned judge is going to have to know how to handle, right? And so there's a prioritization. Okay, kid cases involving sexual assault of children, those cases get priority. They come first. Victims come first in Montgomery County. That's the approach that I've taken at the district attorney's office, and that's the approach I'm obligated to take as a district court judge.
Good.
Are you going to have to recuse yourself from cases that you worked on in the DA's office when you become judge?
If I have substantive knowledge of a case, I will have to recuse myself. I'm involved in a lot of different cases. I can tell you part of kind of being a DA's office prosecutor effort player means that I work DA intake, right? And so that means that, I'm working sometimes at these hours, sometimes between midnight and 8 to accept charges from officers, providing them legal guidance and advice, doing search warrants and things like that. And so that's a natural thing that has to happen when you have anybody from the district attorney's office that becomes a judge. I'm sure that was the same, obviously, for Judge Ghutzman, who took the bench a few years ago. It was the same for Judge Grant, who was the first assistant at the office. Now, there are measures that, such that the primary and things kind of go, the way I would like them to, that we can take at the DA's office to sort of limit that. But, I would expect, and with what has been done in the past, is judges can work as a team to transfer those cases and otherwise balance the caseload. And I certainly would ask them to do that. And, understanding that you've got some former prosecutors on the bench, I'm certain that they would be receptive to that or hopeful.
Gosh, as many cases that you've been involved in, you must be looking forward to that because that'll give you some time off.
Well, I can tell you, and my wife would double down on this. I am not the best at time off. So of line prosecutors in the office, and by that I mean a prosecutor that doesn't specifically work intake as their job, I have consistently been at the top, in the top 3, sometimes at the top of working after hours intake. And that's been a tremendous blessing for my family, but also I spend a lot of time working hand in hand with law enforcement. I expect to keep that same pace as a district court judge. One of the things that's very important to law enforcement is having a judge available 24/7, 365. And you think I'm kidding, but I call Kristen Bays or Judge Phil Grant in the middle of the night at 4 a.m. and I don't call them from some work line, 936 something or other at the courthouse. It says Michael Gutzman when I call, so they know if I'm calling at 4 in the morning, it's usually something pretty important. Judge Santini and all the judges, they do a pretty good job of coming to work and answering the phone and reviewing those warrants when law enforcement needs it. But that's something that is critically important. When law enforcement's out on a scene and they're holding it, that means sometimes guns are drawn. That means people have handcuffs on. That means that probable cause needs to be reviewed now. And I'm committed to doing that. So I see I have 48 seconds left, so I'll give you one more. I'm a little atypical for my generation. I answer the phone, okay, which is weird. I'm less of a text message guy. and I like face to face. So for somebody that's 37 years old, that's not typical. But my mom and dad have a career in freight company. They've had it since 1979. And the phrase in our house used to be, you want to eat, you answer the phone because deliveries have to get from A to B. So I am not a typical public servant. I mean, if it's off hours, I can't tell you how many calls I get from law enforcement, that I'm not getting paid for, but I'm happy to do it because that's what public service requires.
My question is,
Well, that wasn't a question.
no.
Timed you, right?
Oh, yeah,
That was just,
let me reset.
that was just,
Go ahead. That was a mulligan. I got it.
why such a backlog? And a while ago you said that 90-day recess. Explain that.
Well, very rarely is there a good reason for a 90-day reset on a case. Sometimes there is, okay? In cases that involve DNA testing, where you're waiting on results, that's something that the state and the defense are most likely going to need before a case is resolved. Not always, but law enforcement has a much better grasp of DNA and DNA technology, can do some amazing things, but our labs take time to process that information. I can tell you the district attorney's office has a fund, the sheriff's office has a fund to expedite testing in certain matters, which is an important thing for a district court judge to know. But of course, you can't do that in every case because they're stewards of our taxpayer dollars as well. But where it's important, where someone has been slain in our community, right, we will go and go to every length that we can go to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to solve that case. But as a judge, you have to make sure that you're holding the parties accountable to a timeline, right? And so at some point that evidence has to come in. At some point we have to make a decision. We have to move the ball forward. But in most cases, like our drug cases, like our family violence cases, those cases need to be not rushed, right? But the parties need to be incentivized to move those cases and to get to a decision point. So they're not just hanging around on our dockets and clogging up our jail, clogging up our courts, and where honestly the defendant and the victim are not getting a decision. They're not getting the justice that they deserve.
So, so you started in Harris County DA's office there. So you've been on the prosecutorial side your entire career, pretty much.
I have.
Have you been on the defense at all? Defense side?
No, I haven't.
Okay. How important do you think that might be to kind of see it from a different side of the prison, so to speak? If you're looking at a case and you see it from the prosecutor side, I can see where the top dog would come from,
Mhm.
in that situation. But and from a judge's standpoint, you have to look at it from all around that prism, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of seek what the truth is, and from that standpoint, do you feel like you've got that breadth of experience to be able to do that, to hear that case fully, not only from the prosecutor but also from the defense side?
I do, and let me tell you why. So, I value the members of our local defense bar here. They're very good lawyers. Oftentimes, it's the case that people, criminal defendants or otherwise, think when you get an appointed lawyer that you don't have good representation, and I can tell you that is absolutely not the truth. Every person that appears before me, whether it's a criminal defendant, their attorney, or the state of Texas, a witness, a victim, will have a fair shake in my court. I believe that a judge should rule with compassion, integrity, and fairness in every decision that's made. And that's not just compassion for the criminal defendant, that's compassion for the victim too. But having not been a defense attorney, I don't think that's a problem. And here's why I don't think you should think it's a problem either. A prosecutor that's doing his or her job correctly should be able to do more justice in a week with a blue pen and a dismissal, or a no bill in front of a grand jury where it's called for, than a defense attorney can do all year. And that's not to minimize their role, but we have to listen. And I have listened over the course of my career. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with a member of the defense bar today, and there was something critical that she posted in an emotional, bit of emotion on Facebook. And I called her and I wanted to hear her concerns directly. And I talked to her and she apologized to me because she said, Michael, you've been professional in every situation that I've dealt with you with, and that's been over the course of 7 years. But if defense attorneys are worried that they're not going to they're not going to get a fair shake in my courtroom, all they need to do, if they haven't worked with me on a case before, which probably isn't very many people, is they need to ask somebody in our local defense bar. And for those that have worked with me, I can give you references to let you know that I have always been fair in my dealings, and that's how I'll be as a district court judge. But mind you, I'm obligated, juries are obligated when the state of Texas has the goods and when they can prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. And when we're dealing with violent offenders or habitual offenders that the law requires minimum punishments of, I will not disregard those enhancements. I will follow the law and I will sentence them accordingly.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, you had talked about the areas where, one of the questions was which areas need the most urgent reform. And you had a lot to say about that, and you had a lot of experience getting some significant reforms in place. Would you tell us a little bit about that answer?
Of course, cybercrime, the law is woefully behind. I had my first go around with the Texas legislature, and I can tell you that was interesting. But when I was down in financial crimes, I was part of a group and led the effort to seize the first cryptocurrency in Montgomery County history. We now have a unit that can specialize in fraud and cryptocurrency related fraud, which typically affects, those 45 to 75, those retirement eligible, those with assets, that, online criminals are coming after your money, and it's usually either a romance scam or a finance related scam, an investment scam. And we can't always prosecute those cases. But when the law allows, we can try to retrieve that money back for victims, and we've been successful on that front. But I led the charge and authored 2 separate bills this legislative session that were signed by Governor Abbott. And the first was a venue-related provision for cybercrime, right? And so for intangible personal property, and that's everything from cryptocurrency to when John gets on his bank app and looks at how much money he's got in the bank. I mean, that money exists everywhere and nowhere all at one time. But if it's stolen from you, right, where do you prosecute that offense? Well, before we just had to guess. Now we know we can prosecute it where the victim resides. Because if you're going to have a cyber criminal in one of the 254 counties in the state of Texas, somewhere else in the United States, or at times somewhere else in the world, right? I don't care about going to where they are to prosecute that case. I want to prosecute that case where someone's victimized and give us a legitimate chance of holding someone accountable. So that was an important piece of legislation. I'm glad that passed. The other was an administrative subpoena bill for cybercrime. These investigations move in seconds, sometimes matter, right? You have Bitcoin or cryptocurrency that's one place at one time, and all of a sudden it's transferred to some other exchange. You have to be able to act quickly. The administrative subpoena statute gives law enforcement the ability to send those administrative subpoenas out with the signature of a prosecutor to get records in specific cybercrime cases.
So one of my things is, and you probably haven't done a lot of this, is election integrity. Okay, I really believe that is the number one thing that the state and Fed should be really looking at. In the Paxton case, they ruled that he really couldn't go in and find his own crimes or prosecute his own crimes. So can you kind of explain, that was a high profile case. Can you go through that a little bit? And then are you going to be involved with anything with election integrity, or is this just criminal, mischief, like, I don't know, somebody kills somebody and that kind of stuff? So
no, I appreciate your question. It's an important issue. If I am able to take the bench in the 359th District Court, I will be obligated to apply the law and not decide it. The state of Texas, whether that be the Attorney General's office or the district attorney, they have the absolute authority to file criminal cases by complaint or indictment and bring them before a district court judge, such that they do that, whether it's on an election integrity matter or a violent crime, like you mentioned, or a narcotics case or a child abuse case. I will apply the law that is in effect at the time. And, I haven't worked any election integrity cases, but what I can tell you is I think the integrity of our elections are important. I think that an attack on election integrity is an attack on all of us and our constitutional rights and freedoms. I would certainly take that case seriously as a district court judge.
okay, Bob.
This was an easy, quick answer for you. Do you think judges should be elected by the people or appointed by a commission? And you said elected by the people. Can you tell us why?
Sure. So On the form, I'll tell you, I had to pick one answer to submit it. So
I know.
I picked the answer that is the law in effect at the time, right? So respectfully, I'm running for a position where my obligation will be to apply the law and not decide it. Currently, as you all know, judges are elected in Texas. There's some pros and cons to that. Certainly, there are pros and cons to having a commission or the governor or whomever, in a strong governor state, constitutionally strong. Not to say our governor isn't strong, but I'm talking about from a public policy perspective, but where the governor or commission appoints, right? So, there are pros and cons there, but right now judges are elected and that's the law we have. And that's the law I'll be operating under.
I'm asking for a personal opinion, not just the law.
Well, as you know, I can't give you a personal
Yeah, you
opinion
can.
on that matter.
Yeah, you can. I mean, we've gone through this with a number of people running for judges that they feel they can't tell us what their personal views are, and that's we've debunked that over the years. I don't remember the cases,
Well,
but
we had consultation from both lawyers and judges.
Hmm.
Regarding that.
Well,
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just wanted to know.
No, I appreciate it.
Why you
You,
agree or
you,
disagree.
you have my selection, right?
Right.
In Texas, it's not that just the case for judges, right? We have 254 counties for a reason. The founders of the state of Texas believe that the people should have a choice in their elections and their elected officials. It was critically important to them. It's critically important to me. People fought and died for those rights. So that is the law that we have in effect, and I respect it and encourage people to go out and make their votes count.
Larry?
Several months ago, Kristen Bays, several of the judges were talking about we really need a new facility to help with all of the courtrooms. So could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. What I can't tell you, unfortunately, as an economics guy, I'm a numbers guy. I've seen some of the presentations, but I haven't been involved in those discussions. So I really can't tell you or elaborate what all the options are, but I can tell you what I've seen as a prosecutor. In our courthouse, when I'm trying, let's say, or not, when I have tried a continuous sexual abuse case, I've tried continuous sexual abuse cases with 5 little kids that are victims. And we have to find places for them in the office, and downstairs we have some limited victim assistance facilities and things like that, rooms where we can put people, but we can't always, because they're witnesses under the effect of the rule, they can't communicate with each other. We can't necessarily always put them in the same room. And so we go to extraordinary lengths to make sure that they're secure and comfortable, right? But I can tell you it's a challenge. And when you go upstairs to the 3rd floor, you have inmates that are in chains. They're sitting in the gallery, and they're sitting sometimes right next to your witnesses and sometimes close to your victims. And I can tell you it is not ideal from a security standpoint. When I came here from Harris County, my first office was on the east side of the building. It was overlooking Sal's Polacaria over there. And I can tell you the first time that I saw Montgomery County Sheriff's Office deputies doing prisoner transport, it shocked me. That is not a hard target. Those deputies are out there and they've got their AR-15s and, they've got, everything that the sheriff can arm them with, but there are no hard target security measures. They are doing prisoner transfer there, and, they're at some risk, and it is not ideal. That being said, the sheriff also has an obligation to house prisoners at the jail, and we're reaching a point where he needs more space too. What's the right answer? I think the numbers probably bear that question out. The commissioners will make that decision in conjunction with the heads of law enforcement, the sheriff, the DA, the judges. I hope to contribute to that decision, but I know there's a lot going on there, and I couldn't give you an opinion just because I really haven't been able to take into account the underlying data.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Bob. I know you got another one queued up for me.
I do. That's a big one.
What does it make, just a basic question, to mean that you're board certified in criminal law as, say, opposed to your opponent?
So I believe we're both board certified in criminal law.
Okay.
And what I can tell you is, from the website, I think 774, somewhere around there is the number of lawyers in Texas, but it's a tremendous honor. I can tell you, you have to study for a test. The test ain't easy. I told myself when I took the bar exam, it's like, hey, it's the last test I'll ever take. And then, you go down the road and then you practice. And, then somebody's like, hey, you've got a trial. You should go, apply for board certification. I'm like, oh, yeah, it's a good idea. It's not fun. Okay. But, nobody's shooting at you when you're taking the test, but you have to get references too. So it's not just, you're a whiz bang, you go take the test and you're in good shape. You have to have the requisite number of trials. And that's not just misdemeanors. If you try a bunch of misdemeanors and, you're all world and Walmart thefts, you're not getting board certified. You got to try felonies. Okay. And you have to have that diversity of experience. I can tell you, I have that. I mean, there are some prosecutors that sort of go through their career and they try one type of case and they get good at it over and over and over again. You don't need a district court judge like that. You need a district court judge that's not afraid to queue up something weird like an engaging in organized criminal activity. I can't think of another prosecutor since I've been here, since November of 2017, that's tried organized crime. I've tried 2 of them, right? A forgery case. You think that, oh, well, that's not a violent crime in the parking lot outside. Some prosecutors might be a little worried about that. I'm not. Okay. I got a jury to give a guy 60 years. He was a habitual offender for doing a forgery. That doesn't sound important to a lot of people. It was important to those victims. And it was important to the lady whose house that the guy broke into 10 years ago in Kingwood when he probably should have still been in prison. So to answer your question more directly, board certification is important. You have to have references, also judges, members of the defense bar and all that. I was able to get those and obtain board certification with the encouragement of the district attorney, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do that.
Could an auto pen be forgery?
Oh, watch out. Shots fired. I have to make a decision on that, Bob. If that case came before me, come on.
Yeah. That's right. So the overcrowding and the need for more space, just not enough hours in the day to get all the trials through and the backlogs that come as a result of that. Why can't we go back to night court again? From someone that's a trial dog and has spent all those hours, you're up at 4 a.m. in the morning anyway.
Well,
why not be on the bench adjudicating?
Maybe we can. And you see that sometimes with traffic ticket court, which may be more ideal for that.
Yeah.
Serious felonies require security, and it requires a lot of different stakeholders: the clerk, the sheriff's office, the state, the prosecutors, the defense bar, the judges, the court staff, right, assistant clerks and court reporter and all that. I mean, it's a lot that goes into that. And in some circumstances that might be ideal. In other circumstances, it just might not be. I'd want to look at what options we have available. But what I can tell you is this: I am somebody that knows how to lean into a docket and to use the tools that we have. And so with the commissioners, everybody always has a good idea. 53% of our budget is law enforcement. Of the $500 million that is our budget in Montgomery County, I can tell you, we get about 10,000 or so potential jurors a year. We prosecute 10,000 misdemeanors and 7,000 felonies. And I can tell you, like we talked about before, people aren't necessarily enthusiastic about coming out to the courthouse. When you come to be a juror in Montgomery County, you don't get to go to a fancy jury holding facility where you get to sit down and have a snack and a coffee. You're outside. And that means if it's cold like it is today, you're outside. If it's hot like it is most of the time, you're outside. If it's raining, you're outside. So we've got some needs in Montgomery County, and I don't envy the commissioners. And they have to prioritize those needs. But I don't also use the word need lightly, right? There's a lot of things that we can do with what we have. And so I believe as a judge, I'm obligated to do that. I think there are things that we can do in the courtroom right now with the tools that we have. The legislature has given us a new court that's going to come online that can certainly help with that, but that we owe the sheriff and the members of this community every obligation to continue to push those dockets down to the best of our ability while taking the time that we need to on important cases that need it. Because the wheels of justice turn slowly, but they grind finally, right? And so we need to make sure that on those victim cases, right, that we're giving those victims every opportunity that they need to come forward and do that case the right way.
So your case docket, what are your metrics for success? So if you get elected, okay, I can see where your dockets are an important thing, but what else is there in the court, the 359 that you would consider successful? Is it other crimes? How do you measure success?
I'd like to get about 50 or so thousand votes in the Republican primaries, where I'd like to start. So such that you guys
Okay,
can help me do
after
that. But in the
that-
359th district court, you know, like I said, it tips the scale. Sort of 1,100 cases, right? Other courts can be down in the 700s. You know, I'm not gonna hide from it, Luis. Okay, I like to be number one. You may have picked up on that.
Yeah.
Okay, my wife is gonna slap me when she hears me say that on a recording, right? She
You
wants me
don't
to
show her the recorded.
she wants me to humble myself, and you know, in all seriousness, though, I can tell you the judges at the courthouse, they work hard, right? I think some new ideas can help with that. I know that during my career as a prosecutor, I've been able to work with the judges to accomplish a great many things, and I'd like to continue to do that on the bench. I am very enthusiastic about the new court coming online as well. I think that gives us another outlet for cases. There are things that have been done in other jurisdictions with sort of state jail felony dockets, you know, maybe a night court situation, or you know, alternative means of having a visiting judge come in and try some cases, right? We have some things that we can do, and it just depends on the circumstances at the time to decide what those options might be and what are the best options. So in terms of a specific plan, you know, I've already mentioned the standby docket for you know, typically that would be for like a low-level drug case, a state jail felony or third degree. We can move those cases to disposition a little faster. We can take those cases and roll them every 2 weeks and let the witnesses know to be on standby, because most of the time, those are professional witnesses that should be available. Cases involving victims have to be handled delicately. Those cases take longer. It's about deciding between the two, and sometimes it's not as obvious as that.
I was thinking more like budgeting, finance, or cybercrime.
Mhm.
I mean, certainly, I believe cybercrime is one of the growing things that is happening. I know personally, I know several people who've been scammed out of not a lot of money,
Mhm.
but if you look at all that, it just feels like, and I've tried calling the police whenever I get a scammer and nothing happens,
Mhm.
but that's different.
Well, I can't tell you what I'll do as a judge, of course, 'cause I'll have to apply the law as it comes before me, but I can tell
Right.
you what I've done as a prosecutor, and that's to lean into people that are doing scams. And I
Yeah,
don't care
that's-
whether they're in the state of Texas or not. There was a lady's case we moved through to disposition that was from Michigan, and you may have heard of the bail bond scams going on. And, you know, I don't just take those phone calls. You know, I work vertical prosecution cases with investigators, myself, an investigator from Precinct 3. We worked with the Michigan State Police, and we were able to bring that lady to justice in Montgomery County. The first time, okay, that she scammed somebody at Montgomery County, she got a ticket to come down here to Montgomery County and get prosecuted. And it turns out she was associated with a multi-million-dollar prison. We started on this prison scam ring in the state of Georgia, right? And we were able to work that case, provide some information to the authorities working on it. And sometimes that's what's necessary to crack a big investigation. And we're not afraid to do it here in Montgomery County when we need to.
And we need to advertise that more often so all people understand what happens.
Mhm.
I think, see, I didn't hear very much. I heard a little smidgen of it, but not a lot, not that much detail.
Mhm.
Would
Yep.
be good to.
Well,
cover my-
I'll tell you where it happens a lot, and this is also something important to know as a judge, right? In internet crimes against children, we have one of the best internet crimes against children task force groups here in Montgomery County of all time. And it is a routine endeavor where they are bringing people that seek to harm children over the internet in Montgomery County when we bring them from other states here to prosecute them. And there is no better place really in the office to work than internet crimes against children. They're doing amazing things there, and we should support them in every way possible.
Okay, thanks.
So one of the questions was, please describe the best way for average voter to determine which judicial candidate is the best. And your actions, experience, your question was pretty good, but how does the word get out? How do you get the word out?
A
You
lot
know,
of
we
doors
don't-
to knock on, Bob.
I know.
I wear tennis shoes for that job.
So that's part of your plan then.
Oh, it's part of it. You know, look, I guess this is probably a time that I should lead off with. This is a little bit of a reluctant run. I mean, I'm a criminal justice guy, but I did not come out of law school seeking to be a judge. And I'll tell you, there are. You graduate from people and oh, I could see myself being a judge one day and all that. It's like, buddy, you don't know which direction the road goes on. You've never been in a courtroom, okay? Chill out, right? But look, getting elected is part of the process. You got to spend money. You got to fundraise. It's an unfortunate part of the business. I don't feel like a young man anymore. I have 5 kids that are 6 and under. I'm 37 years old, but in politics, I guess I'm a young man again. And so, people want to know that you're serious. So I can tell you, I'm serious as a heart attack. I've raised over $100,000. My commitment to criminal justice in this race and throughout the county is unmatched. And I would not have the endorsement of somebody like Brett Ligon. I would not have the endorsement of the Houston Police Officers Union, their 5,300 members, 28,000 members of the Combined Law Enforcement Associations of Texas, and the Coalition of Police and Sheriffs, and 10 police chiefs in this county if they didn't think that I was committed. And I am. And, one of the things that's important to me is, Brett Ligon's approach to criminal justice here. I think clearly he's seeking to export that to other areas of Texas. We are looked at as the best district attorney's office in Texas. He's leaving big shoes to fill. I'm sure Mike Holly will do a great job, but my opinion is that approach needs to be taken to the bench in Montgomery County. And I'm not a prosecutor anymore once I take the bench, right? So for my members of the defense bar and friends that think that, oh, well, you're just going to be the other prosecutor in the room, no, the sword stays behind, okay? But his approach to keeping us safe, public safety, is something that absolutely should be followed. So when the state of Texas brings the goods, I will sentence an offender appropriately.
Is this a 4 or 6 year term?
4.
One of our questions was, please explain your view of recidivism. How do you say that?
Recidivism?
Okay. I,
It's when they keep doing it again and again
I'm really
in
good.
other jurisdictions,
I'm really good at messing up.
Yes, sir.
And explain that. Give us an overall view of that and how it affects the sentences that you would give.
Well, of course, I can't tell you exactly what I would give without the facts and applying the law and all that, but I can tell you what I've done as a prosecutor. And I can tell you my general thoughts on it is that, I wrote that, recidivism shouldn't be a reflex, meaning that you just look at somebody's criminal history and then you throw the book at them, right? There's a lot that goes into sentencing. The facts of the case, was there a victim or not, what the person's criminal history is. And I can tell you that the law requires in certain cases offenders that have certain criminal history that they have their punishment range has a minimum sentence. So for instance, for a habitual offender, somebody that has been to prison, they've gotten out, they go to prison again, and they commit a first, second, or third degree felony, they can be punished 25 years to life. And there's a lot of room there. Texas law gives a lot of discretion to the state of Texas in charging, and they choose what enhancements they want to bring forward or not. As a judge, and I can tell you as a prosecutor, I've heard in other jurisdictions there are courts and judges that ignore the law and they will disregard those enhancements. That's not my job. My job is not to decide the law, it's to apply it, and that's what I will do. And so recidivism is an important concept, right? When you have an offender that is doing the same thing over and over again, especially a violent offender, right? Those cases should be taken seriously, and I can tell you that I'm going to do that.
Well, I'm out of questions because they used all my questions. I don't know what to tell you. I'm gonna pass the mic.
You need to file. I'm still a prosecutor. You need to file a theft case.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll talk outside.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk after this.
I'm gonna color outside the lines a little bit with my question.
That's all right. Do it.
So, a friend of my family, the most common place that a regular citizen is going to intersect with a criminal court is probably on a DUI charge. Would you agree that's relatively a common area?
Maybe. I mean, I'd say probably more likely a speeding ticket or
Maybe,
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
that's true.
But
I forgot that.
sure.
More minor.
Sure.
I've heard people giving me this side of what happens in a DUI, and it seems like it's a problem area that needs some help. I don't know what latitude the judge who presides has over these cases, but I've heard this story probably 2 or 3 times in different counties in the state of Texas as having occurred, that they would be assigned a defense attorney, and the defense attorney is basically AWOL, the court-appointed attorney. They submit requests to be paid very quickly in the Odyssey system. You can find in the court record that they've definitely submitted an invoice, but they don't answer the phone calls from any of their clients. And so I don't believe that's happening in Montgomery County. I have not heard of that happening in Montgomery County, but I have heard of it happening in at least 3 other Texas counties pretty regularly. So as a judge, what can you do to make sure that the people who come into your court that have court-appointed attorneys actually get justice, that these people do their jobs?
It's a good
What can you do
question.
to hold their feet to the fire?
It's a good question, and defense attorneys are essential to the criminal justice system and how we do business in court and doing business the right way, right? Because every decision that we make every single day, right? And it's not that way in other jobs. Every single decision that we make critically affects someone's life. I can tell you as a district court judge, the practice is that there are 10 assigned defense attorneys that work in a particular district court, and the judge has a say in who those attorneys are. And so much like you're vetting me as a judge, I would vet candidates to be an appointed defense attorney in the 359th District Court. Fortunately, I don't know that there are any, maybe with one or two exceptions, just to say that there might be. But I've worked with most of the defense attorneys in the county. And I have a good reputation with the defense bar, but a district court judge is obligated to not pick their friends, right, but to pick competent lawyers. And if they happen to be, you're professionally friendly with them and they're competent, well, hey, that's a win for everybody, right? But, I would want to pick the best lawyers in my court. So that means other judges watch out because I'm coming for the A team, okay? Because a defense attorney that has client control, it's hard to sit down with somebody and tell them the reality that, look, the best it's going to get for you is 25 years. That's the minimum the state of Texas can offer in this case. And I believe they have the evidence to sustain a conviction. Okay. 99% of our cases are resolved by plea bargains. I kind of gave you the numbers on potential jurors. There's no way we could try more than 1% of cases a year. There's no practical way that we could do that by the numbers. Defense attorneys are an essential part of the system. They are a check on the state of Texas, and I would make sure that we have competent and ethical defense attorneys in my court.
The U.S. Constitution, Texas Constitution, really, that's the basis for everything we do from your standpoint. So how will you assure that you follow the Constitution, and what's your philosophy around that, and how would you assure that the Constitution is the document that really supersedes anything else?
Well, it's not a living document. I've never seen a constitution have a heartbeat or a pulse or jump up off the table at me. But I can tell you originalism and textualism, the law should be applied and adopted as it was at the time that it was written. Too often these days, we're seeing in really in other communities, hopefully never here, that judges feel like it's incumbent upon them to decide the law and they're swayed by public policy. And I think it comes from an emotional place. I don't think that it's necessarily all evil or bad-hearted, but sometimes it is. And a judge is obligated to be objective. A judge is obligated to follow the law, and that's even when it hurts. Judges have a lot of discretion. And I can tell you one difference between being a prosecutor and a judge is, a judge has a final say in a lot of issues, not on charging, but many others. It's a judge's job to apply the law as written. And sometimes, granted, I can tell you that can be difficult. If it were an easy job, everybody applied for it. But that's what judges should seek to do. I don't believe that district court judges are often in the position, if they are ever, to strike down a law as being unconstitutional. That's a job for our appellate courts. It's a job for the Court of Criminal Appeals, possibly the Supreme Court, depending on what the exact issue is. But I believe it's a district court judge's obligation to apply the law as written. I don't believe that legislating from the bench is appropriate, and that's something that I won't do as a district court judge.
And that was my political pressure sometimes, or what the society says is right or wrong, sometimes dictates how judges legislate. And to me, that's a concern. And we see it through the country, and maybe not in Montgomery County, but I want to make sure you understand, we really want you to follow the law or the way it's written. But there's a lot of discretion in that. There's gray area and everything. So that's my biggest concern whenever we have judges is, will they really follow the Constitution and more what the originating framers wanted. So that's a main concern.
Well, I can tell you that is important to me, and then I will do my best to do it. And, you know, there may come a time at some point where, you know, I feel like I can't. And if that's the case, then I'll go out into private practice, or I'll go start my own business, or I'll do something else. But if that thought crosses my mind, I know at that point I should no longer be a district court judge.
I was gonna tag on to that one, but the time ran out. But I'll go ahead and do it anyway to go along with what he was saying was, already in Texas, as in other states, we're seeing courts sway away from the constitutions and going with world law or Sharia law, and making judgment on those cases through those avenues. And these are judges that have sworn to uphold the Constitution, but they end up using another law as well. And again, like Louis said, they're swayed by the public opinion and the people that are out there. Do you ever see that being the case?
Well, you're about to get a gem right here, Bob, okay? Because I'm going to tell you something that a politician or a lawyer almost never going to tell you. I don't know anything about Sharia law. I don't know anything about world law, and that won't have any sway in my courtroom. I will stick to the constitutional principles that the founders have dictated to us in the U.S. and Texas constitutions, and most often, too, that means also applying statutory law and case law as it is dictated from our superior courts, namely the Ninth Court of Appeals and the Court of Criminal Appeals in Texas. The law is very important to me. If you're getting into this business and you don't have a love of the law, then you're in the wrong business. If you want to change the law, then go to Austin. And I can tell you, it ain't easy, as you well know. But I did it. And, you know, I went before the Committee on Criminal Jurisprudence, and I got up there and I talked about the tangible personal property. And I was shocked. I didn't get a single question because the law needed to change. It was great. Everybody else got questions. I sat down and they were shocked. Michael, you didn't need any questions. I was like, yeah, you know, it's a tough bill. Cybercrime's a tough area. You don't want to wade into those waters unless you're ready, right? But all kidding aside, that's not my job as a judge. I love the folks in Austin. I had a good experience. I did that once, and for me, once was enough up there. So I wish Brett and all the other folks that have to go up there, and you know, our legislators, I wish them the best. But that's not for me. I'm going to stick around here in Montgomery County and be a judge.
We talked about personal. What do I want to say? I just lost it. So, my other question was going to be your opinion and your feelings on civil asset forfeiture, where people's assets are taken from them when they're arrested prior to actually being in court and found guilty, which to me is against the law. But your thoughts? So it's happened in this county a lot.
Sure, and I can tell you, you know. Again, my job would be to apply the law and not decide it. So I can't tell you, you know, what decisions I would make, but I can tell you what I've done as a prosecutor. I can tell you what the law is now. Right now, Chapter 59 allows the state of Texas to go after civil assets. At the Montgomery County District Attorney's Office, that is only done by policy when there is a legitimate law enforcement investigation. The law in effect now is that civil forfeiture is legal. It should be done in a limited fashion. It should be done appropriately. And property will only be seized in my court if and when the state of Texas provides, number one, the appropriate evidence, and two, that they follow the law.
So is that a conviction then?
So the criminal case and the civil forfeiture process are two different things.
Okay.
If someone is prosecuted for a crime, that case would go, you know, potentially before the judge in the 359th District Court. A civil forfeiture would go before Judge Santini or Judge Bays.
Okay. Same crime, but the same people, but they're going to have to go to two cases.
Oftentimes those cases are related.
I don't have another question, but I have a comment. A while ago, you mentioned a few organizations that were behind you. I was just wondering, did you not realize that you had another page that you could have included more on, you only put about 40 on this.
Oh, well, I can tell you, I've been working hard. I have a few more names to add to that list. You know, I can tell you, the endorsements from the police officers, the Houston Police Officers Union. I've worked a lot of cases with HPD, both in Harris County and here. I worked a bank jugging case like you wouldn't believe, involving a guy named Jose Singleton, with a great undercover operation. The guy was on bond, 2 different cases in Harris County, and we did a sting up here in Montgomery County, and he was a habitual offender. He got 38 years, and he deserved every one of them. So I am very proud to have the Houston Police Officers Union endorsement. Same thing for CLEAT, same thing for the Coalition of Police and Sheriffs and the police chiefs in the county. But, you know, what I can tell you is, you know, it's very important to me to have the support of the precinct chairs. And I have a few I could add that I've been able to talk with since this meeting, but I'm probably about 5 or 6 precinct chairs away from having called everyone, the over 112, I think. I'm not sure, somewhere around there, a little over 100. I know we have some vacancies. But one of the first things that I did in my campaign, Larry, is that I started from number 1 and I've worked all the way through. I want everybody that's in their precinct to know my name and to hear my voice directly and understand that I'm not just a face on a piece of paper and, you know, some endorsements, right? You know, Brett specifically too. I know he's not the district attorney anymore, but you know, we sat down and we've had kind of an ongoing dialogue about this. And he told me, he said, "Listen, I don't want to be your first endorsement. You know, get out there and go to work." And that's what I've done for him as a prosecutor. That's what I'm going to do as a candidate. And that's what I want to do as your next judge.
And I noticed one here that was Jackie Sherrill, the head coach of the Fighting Texas Aggies.
That's right. November 20th, Coach Sherrill's going to be at my event. He's known me since I was a little kid. And I'll tell you right now, he was the founder of the 12th man kickoff team. And obviously it's a staple at Texas A&M University. If I were around when he was coaching the Aggies, I would have jumped onto the field to play for him. And, you know, he's jumping out of retirement to come play for me on Team Michael Ghutzman for the 359th District Court. So I appreciate Coach Sherrill. Yeah. Yeah. I've been told by some you need a football player, a war hero, and a movie star. Well, I don't know any movie stars, but I'm working on it, Larry.
There you go. Okay, we're at that point now. We can take up 5 minutes on your closing, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, I can tell you, look, I appreciate your time. Take a stretch break if you need to. You know, I don't have anything negative to say about my opponent, and I hope you haven't, you know, construed anything I've said as negative. But, you know, I'm here to tell you why I think I'm a worthy candidate, and I love this community. I went to high school here. I live in Montgomery, and, you know, I'm raising 5 kids there with my wife. I plan to be around a long time. And I want to be your next district court judge in the 359th because I think I'm qualified. I think there are some great organizations, as Larry mentioned, and criminal justice folks in this community that think that I'm qualified. And I want to make sure that I live up to that and that I'm worthy of those endorsements. And I will be. But what I want you to take away is that you can't just have a resume of having done it, right? You know, I think it was John, you asked me a question about having been a defense attorney or not. And, you know, I hope you didn't construe anything that I said as being negative about the defense bar. You know, certainly didn't mean it. But I'll tell you, you know, practically, if you want to look behind the curtain, is that some people get out of prosecution for a couple of reasons. One is that you can make more money as a defense lawyer. And 2, if you want to be able to control your own schedule and determine how many cases you take and how much you charge for them, you know, you go into private practice and you can do that just like you do in any other business, whether that's plumbing, electrical, selling cars, what have you. I've chosen to lead a life of public service, and that's what I want to continue to do. And I'd like for you guys to give me the opportunity to do it. And I'm serious about it. You know, I think some people worry sometimes that, you know, I'll lean in and get a little too serious. And, you know, all I can tell you is, well, it's a serious business. I'm in the right job. And I take my job seriously. You know, my poor wife, you know, she wants me to get out of the house, go back to work and all that. If you guys don't give me this job, you know, I'm still a prosecutor and all that kind of deal. You know, I know she might be a little upset at you, but she is incredibly supportive. I mean, right now, I mean, she's feeding and bathing and, you know, making sure my little kids get cleaned up. So this run for judge, I can tell you, is a whole family effort. I'm appreciative of my brothers, my dad, and every endorsement on that page and all of the people that have supported me And I can tell you that, members of this community are doing that for a reason, right? They know that I can get the job done. I want to get the job done, and I want you to give me an opportunity to do it. The last thing I'll say is this. This is a great community. This is a great community. And I love working at the DA's office. We have a great DA's office, and much in the same way is, it's real easy to sit back and say, wow, we live in a great place. Let's just sit back and kind of take it all in. We don't need to do anything. Well, I don't get excited because we live in a great community and we live in a safe community. I get excited because I see opportunity there to see how much safer and how much better our community can be. And I think we lead the way in the state of Texas on a lot of issues. And I want to continue to do that as a judge.
All right, great. Thank you very much for coming in, for answering our questionnaire. Appreciate that, and good luck in your campaign.
I appreciate the time. Thanks, John. Thanks,
Yes, sir.
everybody.
Thank you. If you got a second.